Hey, you watching this video, you need to read more.
Hey, tell me more.
Reading isn't just some personal habit for nerds and dinosaurs. Reading is a cognitive skill, and right now, it is one of the most underdeveloped cognitive skills that we have. And I know I'm saying this to you as you're watching a video, but trust me, you gotta read more. We live in a time where most of our thinking, most of our input comes through listening and watching. Every one of these videos starts as a Substack post, but I recognize that people don't really read anymore. It's just the fact of the matter. Look, here it is. I've got a chart here for you. The numbers are going down. With each passing generation, we are reading less. And we are living in a time of podcasts and viral videos and short form clips, and it seems like reading is just unnecessary. Many of us will say to ourselves, I'm still taking in the information, I'm still learning. Does it matter if it's coming by listening or watching? The answer is absolutely yes. When we read, our brains are working differently. They're moving in a different direction. The neurons are firing in a different way. It's not that listening and watching are bad. I'm not anti-podcast or anti-video. My wife will tell you I'm always listening to or watching something, but I'm also always reading something, specifically a physical book, because it codes differently in our minds. When you read, your brain has to work differently. It isn't just receiving information, it's constructing it. You're decoding symbols, holding ideas in working memory, imagining context, tone, and meaning without visual cues to fill in the blanks for you. Neuroscientists will tell you that reading activates deeper and more distributed neural networks than passive consumption. Translation: reading literally codes information differently in your brain. You're not just learning something when you read. You're changing how you think. One of the most important things about reading is that it forces you to slow down. We live in a world where we can listen to podcasts, watch a show, read a text, play a game on our phone, all while doing something else. We're half doing everything. And even podcasting, where you're trained to speak a little bit slower. This is a problem I have, being a fast-talking New Yorker, where you're trained to speak a little bit slower. We listen to those at 1.5 speed because we can't handle it. With reading, it's very hard to multitask because you have to sit there and you have to be present. Reading forces you to be in the moment. Reading forces you to let a fully formed thought come to fruition. It's a lot harder to do that when you're reading, but also trying to watch something. When you're reading, but also trying to have a conversation. When you're reading, but also trying to answer the text. Reading forces you into the moment in a way that very few other things in our modern times does. I think if we pause for a moment and look at the current state of ourselves in the world, we live in a time of increased anxiety, increased frustration. We don't often talk about how that increased anxiety and that increased frustration is the result of increased fragmentation. We are constantly being pulled in a million different directions. Every ding, every ping, every notification. It is January 2026. And if you are like me and you watch a lot of TV, there's way too many shows to keep up with. It's like everyone decided to start the year off with a new season, and I can't keep up. But there's too little time for reflection, too little time for synthesis, too little time to sit and think about all the things we're taking in and form big thoughts. Reading is an intentional practice that forces us to slow down, to be here, to be in the moment. There's something special about that. There's a nuance that's created in that. There's a part of our brain that gets to work better and work differently and actually be. We need time and space for reflection. We're not designed to just constantly take in information. We struggle with that. And I think that's why we're so anxious, because we're living on different parts and different bits and pieces, and we can't get anything fully together, and it's destroying us. There was a recent study that just came out that said that taking in all of that short form information, that the constant scrolling, that short form consumption has resulted in shrinking attention spans. We're all like Dory, right? The inability to actually sit and pay attention and hold the moment. We just forget everything the moment it happens. It's harder to form a full, complete thought. How many times have you been sitting around and something has hit your mind and then you lost it when that ping came? And you spent minutes struggling, searching, saying to yourself, what was I thinking about? That's where we are right now. That's our moment. Reduced attention spans and the inability to focus. And it's not because the screens are evil, but it's because our brains adapt to what it is fed. And every app, because it's fighting for your attention, has figured out the ways to keep us there longer. It's the quick, short form, bite-sized pieces, but the cost of that is we can't hold a thought anymore. This isn't moral failure on your end. This is neuroplasticity. This is science at work. And so the question for us is, if we know this, what are we going to do about it? There's that old saying, if you knew better, you do better. That's not always true, because a lot of us know that these devices have been a net negative for us, and yet we can't stop scrolling. We now have to get special apps to lock ourselves out of our phones because we can't control the impulses. Reading is a great way to combat this. Here's another reason that reading is so important. Most people stop learning the day their formal education ends. Most people, most is hyperbolic, right? Maybe a lot of people never pick up another book the day they are no longer told they have to. And we live in a country where I want to say, and this is off the top of my head, I want to say that only 46% of Americans go to college, which means the majority of us, by the numbers, stop being educated in high school. Now, I don't know how true these numbers are, but 20 years ago when I finished college, I remember my professor saying to me, you did something special here. Only half of Americans go to college. And of that half, something like 36% have bachelor's degrees. And of that 36%, only 10% go on to get masters. And of that 10%, only 1% of that, I think he said, goes on to get a doctorate. You survived the last 4 years. You did something special. Congratulate yourself for that. And it was really jarring to hear those numbers in the moment. But let us consider that in the wider context of reading. Most of the education you get in this life comes outside of the classroom. And a lot of that education is going to have to be self-directed. Now, there are the things we learn in life, right? The school of hard knocks, so to speak. You're not going to read a book on how to change a tire. You're not going to read a book on how to maybe balance your checkbook, but maybe some books will help on those things. You will need to read a book on how to understand investing. You will need to read a book on maybe how to enter into real estate investing, or how to learn the skills you need for fitness, for mental, emotional health, for spiritual health, for psychological health. The overwhelming majority of what I've learned in this life has come through books. It is choosing to read widely. There's this guy, Rich Villodas, he's a pastor in New York City. He's got this great quote where he says that to be deeply formed, you must be widely informed. If you want to be this deeply formed person, if you want to walk with nuance and complexity and the cognitive flexibility to hold two competing ideas together, then you must be widely informed. Read widely. Read a lot. Things that don't pertain to you, things that have nothing to do with you, things that maybe you just have a slight passing interest in. Read biographies of people who are not in your world or in your realm. This is all important for your formation. I didn't grow up in one of those homes that gave me a lot of tools, for regulation and psychological and social health. A lot of my learning and experience has not just come through trial and error, but through books. Books have helped give me language for who I am and for what I'm experiencing and for how to handle different situations. And I'm not quite sure I would be where I am today had it not been for this voracious reading habit that I developed. Books are a portal. For so many of us, we grow up to become what we see. And if what we see doesn't give us this great vision for what life can be, then we need to find another way. Everyone thought that the 4-minute mile was impossible until the guy that did it. I don't remember his name, all right? But right after he did it, it was like within a year, a dozen other people had done it. We need to know what is possible in order to know that we can do it. Books are a great way to figure that out. Books help us develop vision. Books help give us purpose and clarity. Books help us make sense of the world. Books take us out of the little bubbles that we grew up in and lets us see that there is so much more. Read. Read a lot. Read widely. Be widely informed. Books aren't the only way to get information, but the skill of reading, deep, patient, uninterrupted reading is invaluable. This isn't about intake, it's about formation for an anxious generation. Reading how others have coped with anxiety throughout history can help give you the tools to navigate the current moment. For the struggling entrepreneur, reading something like Shoe Dog by Phil Knight helps you understand what a story of resilience can mean to crafting the road to your success. For those living in political and cultural and economic bubbles, reading the stories of those who are in worlds completely opposite to ours, for those we disagree with, for those who might frustrate us, will help us develop the skill of empathy. History doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme, doesn't it? I recently finished John Adams. Yeah, here it is. John Adams by David McCullough. And I was struck by how so many of the arguments that he faced and so many of the questions that he was asking felt familiar. Same clothes, different era. If you know me, you know I love James Baldwin and his writing, and I say this all the time. If you take the dates off, sometimes we can ask, is Baldwin writing about the 1960s or is he writing about today? If we don't want to repeat the past, then we must read about it. We must learn about it. We must be informed. I will die on this hill. Read so much. I am doing the best I can to turn my kids into voracious readers because I understand the power of books, of how they've changed and shaped my life and how they've brought me to where I am today. Even if you're not trying to become the most skilled person on earth, even if you just want to be a little steadier, a little clearer, a little less reactive, reading matters. It stretches your attention. It deepens your empathy. It trains you to handle complexity without immediately reducing it to a hot take. Those are leadership skills, whether you lead a company, a team, a family, or just yourself. So here's the challenge I'm inviting you into this year. Read more. Read fiction, read nonfiction, read essays that make you uncomfortable, read diverging perspectives, replace judgment with curiosity. Because curiosity is one of the greatest skills you can have, and nothing helps you develop curiosity quite like reading does. My aim is always 50 books a year. Sometimes life's really busy and I can't get close to that. Sometimes, well, life is just always busy, but sometimes I'm able to hit that number. How many books are you going to read this year? What are you challenging yourself to do? And if you want to take it a step further, maybe challenge yourself to read one book from each different category. But I know. You're watching this and you're thinking to yourself, CJ, I don't have time to read. I don't want to read. Reading is stupid. I'd rather just watch you yell at me down your camera on YouTube. I'm telling you, in a world that is constantly being pulled apart, reading might be one of the few things that can bring us back together. But I know you don't believe me because you've made it thus far and you've been fine. You haven't touched a book since you finished college or high school. All right. Let me know how that goes for you. If you want to continue to be shallowly formed, then sure, don't read anything. Keep doing what you're doing. Because what do I know? I'm just some guy from Brooklyn.